The Sons and Daughters Podcast. Discover and walk in the life that Jesus lives inside of you. Hosted by Andy and Tina Hayner, leaders of Full Speed Impact Ministry.
Hi, welcome to the Sons and Daughters Podcast. I'm Tina Hayner, and this is my husband, my industrious, diligent husband, Andy Hayner.
It is so good to be here with you, brothers and sisters. I'm not sure how industrious. I actually had a hard time sleeping last night, and I've been
Not industrious today.
Oh man, it's been a slow day. It feels like a Monday, but it is
Walking
Thursday,
through mud.
and we're blessed to be with you. I'm blessed to be with my wife, Tina Hayner, and we are leaders of Full Speed Impact Ministries. And thank you for joining the Sons and Daughters Podcast, the podcast that we produce on a weekly basis every Friday at noon. We upload another one. And we're really excited. We have a special guest today, a good friend of mine, brother in the Lord, Justin Steidinger. Am I saying that correctly?
You got it right.
Yeah.
Way to go, man.
Usually you
And
call him
he is
Stump Muncher.
yeah, I've got him in my phone as Justin Stump Muncher because he has a business locally here that he can share a little bit about his journey in, but called Stump Eater, if that's right?
That's right.
And he's in Rutherford County, Tennessee, and he is one of the founding members of Bread, which is the ministry that we have become connected with relationally, just because they share a common vision, a common heart, a love for Jesus, and a vision to see the church become a movement of disciple makers that are connected, that are effectively not just gathering together for worship services, but effectively reaching,
Making disciples.
the world around them that would never darken the door of a church.
Right.
And there are quite a few of those around, believe it or not, even in the South.
No kidding.
But Justin, why don't you share a little bit about some of your journey, your background, and just help people get to know you a little bit, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Glad to be here with you guys today. It's been a joy getting to know you guys and just see where your heart is in the kingdom and making disciples. So enjoying that. My wife and I and our 4 kids, we live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And, we do a thing with a lot of disciples as we're like, they're learning how to tell their story. Can you tell your story in 60 seconds or 90 seconds? How do you do it quick?
Okay.
All right. You ever seen the Micro Machine Man?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to go that fast, but I would paraphrase it or shorten it by saying that, since I was young, when the church doors were open, I was there, right? I was there for every kind of event. When I was 14, I started playing on the worship team and leading our youth worship band and led worship there. And did that through my teenage years. My wife and I met and were married when I was 19. And we went with a friend of ours and started a new church. And I was a worship leader and a youth pastor and served in an associate pastor capacity there. And eventually we shut that church down after a number of years, and we went to another church and through a series of events, same thing, got involved with worship. And I was just always doing church. I was always there. I was always in leadership. I was always involved in church. And I did that bivocationally, was never paid for it. I went to college and had an education in computer systems, worked in the healthcare technology industry, and did those 2 things at the same time. And we had a busy life, full-time job, full-time ministry, 4 kids.
Kids on the way.
Yeah, it was craziness. So around 2000 and we'll say 2014, the Lord just began to really move in my heart because we had started another church now, and it was like typical churches. It's small. We meet in a school. Big dreams about the revival we're going to experience one day. Where it's like, God blows the walls out of the church building.
Right.
Sure.
And God's going to definitely do revival in our church because we're the ones.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, Smyrna's here. One of my churches in Smyrna, and we were the church in Smyrna that he talks to.
Yeah. The real one.
That's right. The real
in
one.
the book of Revelation.
Right.
Descended. Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you that aren't familiar with the geography around here, Murfreesboro is located next to a town right here in Tennessee called Smyrna.
It's in between. Smyrna is in between Nashville
which is named
and
after the biblical town in Revelation. So yeah, that's what we're talking about here. So go ahead.
A little bit of a tangent there, but we so I was doing those things, and in 2014 I really started struggling. I remember being one Sunday morning at the school, and we were setting up this worship. We had this big 3-hour process of like setting up drums and setting the lights and the sound system, and then a rehearsal. And I remember going up to set the lights and looking down, and the Lord had really struck my heart recently, and I began to kind of repent for years of doing church in a very legalistic sort of way. Like church was about church.
The program.
The program, yeah. Like I thought I was being obedient to Jesus because I was, showing up for my Bible studies. Worship practice was like my service to the Lord. And I don't want to belittle that or say that it's not important at times, but what it was pointing out to me was that I realized that there was another level of obedience or greater obedience to Jesus that I hadn't been walking in. And then that morning, I remember looking down and thinking, man, I'm here for 3 hours to do this rehearsal and set up. Then we're going to have a 2-hour service. The worship team is almost the size of the whole church combined. Like the church is not much bigger than our worship team.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's not a very big group. And then I'm going to have an hour to break down at the end. And I'm thinking, I'm here for 6 hours. Do you know how much like life impact I could have on someone's life if I were just
6 hours with a
6
person?
hours with them.
pouring into an individual? I feel like I could see more transformation. So through a series of events, I really began to explore the world of disciple multiplication movements, DMM, church planting movements, CPM. You hear all these acronyms we throw out.
Yeah, like alphabet soup around here sometimes.
That's right.
But as long as you got an M in there, multiplication. That's the magic ingredient.
Yep. So anyway, the Lord just kind of brought me from this place of religion and church to becoming more missional. And I started doing some work overseas. I started doing some stuff locally. And in 2015, it was really pulling on my heart to the point that I was given an opportunity with a company that I had helped kind of build from the early ages on. It was a healthcare startup, and I had this opportunity to become a consultant for them so that I could spend more time doing ministry. And that was obviously a transition. It wasn't a long-term thing. So at the end of 2015, I left my nice paying job as a vice president, and I went full-time with my wife and 4 teenagers into the world of missions. And we raised funds and had monthly partners, and we started doing this internationally in different countries, but really wanting to see a movement happen in Murfreesboro. That was Rutherford County. We wanted to see it happen. I was watching it happen in Myanmar and Israel and different places that I was going, and can we see it here? And through that process, we started a nonprofit here in town with my friend John, who I think has been on your show here.
Right. Yeah, John McPeters.
Yep. And so we started a nonprofit and just trying to do this stuff. And over the next 3 years, I met a lot of people that were doing this. And what I found out was that there was this consistent theme. They were sold out to Jesus and they were sold out to this message. But everyone was struggling financially. It was just this constant, it's a walk of faith, and God uses it to teach us. But my wife would tell you, it's really great stories to hear about. Really not fun to live.
Amen, sister.
I can identify with
sister.
that.
Yeah. Like everybody wants to be like, wow, so-and-so's husband got raised from the dead.
Yeah.
But so-and-so had to watch her husband die.
Right.
I mean, how many people have been really encouraged by George Mueller, praying in the bread and the milk for the orphans.
Food.
Yeah. And, it's amazing. He didn't go upstairs to pray thinking, I'm going to have another chapter in my book. He's
No.
like, God, we got to eat.
Yeah,
Exactly.
really. And it's not fun. And we had a lot of those stories, and God really built our faith.
Yeah.
Praise God.
I began to be frustrated a little bit that I was driving around. I had a lot of connections in the church world, and we had really nice buildings, and we had really nice paychecks and really nice amenities for our staffs and all this stuff. But people that were really out there in the world and doing what I could tell was having more or a greater level of transformation and people following Jesus. And we're really struggling. And so I remember in January of 2018, I was in prayer and just really telling the Lord that even though we were given a larger percentage, I wasn't making missionaries, they don't make what vice presidents make.
Yeah, exactly.
So I remember telling the Lord, I really want to be able to give more. I want to support these people. These are my friends. They're my teams. They're the ones that are getting it done. And I began to tell the Lord some specific numbers. I want to give this much this year and then this much. And the numbers I was saying were like 2 and 3 times that I wanted to give away were 2 and 3 times what we were bringing in.
Sure.
So it was like my brain is just, I remember saying, God, I don't even know how that's possible, but this is my heart. And we did a bunch of mission work that year. We spent some time working with Chinese students in Washington State and some things, and a lot of detail there, but it was in September of 2018, to kind of bring it to the business perspective. I was in my prayer closet and I heard the Holy Spirit tell me it was time to go back to work. And I thought, okay, I didn't really know if I liked that because I kind of felt a little bit maybe like I was a missionary failure. But my general rule with the Lord is if the Lord is speaking, you open the door, I'll walk through it. And so I just said, okay, God, you open the door and that's what we'll do. And I was sort of expecting one of my old executives to call me and say, hey, I'm starting a company. I need an operator. Can you come and do this? Instead, one of the things I did to help feed my family was I did some part-time stump grinding on the side whenever I was home and could get to work. And one of my missionary friends' parents called and said, hey, we live in the Carolinas, and we just got hit by Hurricane Florence, and we have 3 trees on our house, and our neighborhood's destroyed, and I know that you do some stump grinding. Would you like to come out here, and you can stay at our house for free, and you can make some extra money to support your family in missions? So the Lord said, open the door, and here's the door.
Here you go.
Let's do it. So I went to the Carolinas, and in that first week, I made in 1 week what I would normally get as a missionary in 5 months, and was spending time with God, and the Lord began to speak to me and say, take this money and build a business back home that you can feed your family from, and you can take care of the people that you asked me for.
Sure. Wow.
And so I started marketing plans and putting stuff together. And as I started doing that, the Lord just began to pour out creativity. It's like he unlocked this part of my brain that had been dormant for years that just thought about business in a different way. And I became ideas just started flooding my brain. Like I couldn't contain them. I started writing stuff down. And so in short, as I came back from the Carolinas at the end of December, I was very nervous about starting a business.
Sure. It's a big step.
I had called a friend of mine and just said, man, I've done the math and to make this work and pay my taxes and cover my expenses, I got to make this much money each month. And that's like 10 times what I've ever made grinding stumps. I just don't know if it's possible. And so in the end, without going into all the numbers, I'm usually very open about numbers, but the Lord just really blessed the first year. We did more than twice what I thought we would. Second year, the Lord doubled their revenue.
Wow.
The third year, we had another 15% increase, and it just has gone on and on and on. And we've been really able to now turn around and give what I was making as a missionary, I'm now able to give
To
that,
give it.
and I'm getting closer. I haven't quite got to the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
but getting closer to the numbers that I told the Lord I wanted to give one day.
Wow. Praise God.
It's been a really big blessing to be able to do that, and there's a lot more in that. But I'll take a break for a minute and see if you have any questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
A couple of things. It sounds to me like you have a couple of different journeys. One is journey from typical church into disciple making movements.
Yep.
And then you had another one, which was from what most people would consider full-time ministry into a ministry assignment that really is start a business or go into the business world. And so, it's kind of neat to me. One of the things that I heard is that it's like as you took that step of obedience, then God began to give you a whole new perspective, new
Absolutely.
vision. It reminds me of that verse that I will make you the head, not the tail. The tail just hangs on. The head is the part that has vision, that has ideas, and so it really is neat that that sometimes that step of faith and how the kingdom provides for us is the kingdom unlocks and stuff within us. The kingdom operates internally, which is exciting, and I think you seem to have had that real testimony for your life in the business world.
Yeah, it's been a blessing, and the thing that's been really big for me was, I think before I had gone the route of doing missions, I kind of sat in this place where I had my career, and I lived my life as a believer. I was working in an IT company, and I was a man of integrity, and people knew who I was. Right?
Christian character, Christian morals.
Yeah, everybody knew who I was, knew I loved the Lord. They knew I was a Christian. But I had work, and then there were some people there I would maybe disciple a little bit, minister to, but then I had church. Right. And so it's like, I'm done at work. I'm going to go take care of my church responsibilities. And there was sort of that sacred secular divide where I didn't completely separate them, but I thought a lot about it. As far as I would say I didn't really mesh the two. They were just two parts of my life that sort of maybe connected a little bit, but there was not as much intentionality in my career towards the kingdom.
Fairly compartmentalized.
Yes.
I was thinking, I know you have 4 kids, but 3 of them are boys. And I was thinking about, I know they help you with your business and that whole, not compartmentalizing, but now your work and you're bringing your sons along, and you get to disciple them not only in work ethic and learning and all in that area, but along the way, spiritual discipleship happens too, with your sons, but I imagine also with other employees that you have and that kind of thing. So it's just knowing you on that level, and and it's like, hey, that's neat. God giving you an idea and a direction with a business that it wasn't just you, but it can involve your family.
So
and discipleship.
Kind of where how did that progress? Because it sounded like you had things fairly compartmentalized, and now you sort of broke the barrier between ministry happens at church, and I do my work, and I'm a good Christian at work, but then I do ministry here. That seems like the secular sacred divide began to break down there.
I used to say when I was in that life, man, when I was at that stage of my life, if I could just be focused on God, I would spend so much time in prayer and reading my word, and I've
heard that so many times from Christian men that don't know how to live out the deepest longings of their heart without just quitting their job.
Yeah.
become a monk.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
This grass is greener on the other side, but now you've sort of been on that side, walked through the pasture, came out the gate on the other end. So I think you can really encourage and speak some life into a lot of people.
The first thing I would say is that when I first started doing missions, I don't know that my initially is for sure my prayer time and my walk with Jesus didn't really go any deeper initially. Towards the end, actually, right there were seasons of really intense time with the Lord, and they were seasons, and certainly some of the fact that I had a flexible schedule, it did aid opportunity to be alone with the Lord.
Yeah, sure.
Right, that just happened. But it didn't change as much as I thought that it would. I expected that, hey, if I get paid full time to do this, I can, I'm going to wake up and just spend the first 6-8 hours of my day with Jesus, and I'm going to pray all the time, and but you don't. There's like
other things that wind up needing
that's
to
exactly
get done, and
you get busy. Stuff just replaces what you were doing.
You still have to fight for your
time.
personal time
Yeah.
with God.
And sometimes it gets filled in with other people's needs that come up because you are.
And it can be a little tricky because if you're not careful, you end up substituting ministry activity for a relationship of intimacy. And that's one thing that I've enjoyed about you is that you're always reminding and pushing people towards that intimacy. So apparently somehow that got resolved.
Yeah. The big thing for me, I think what it was is that having left that corporate world, when I started doing missions, my mind was really simply, Jesus is coming back. And he deserves the obedience of the nations, as Genesis 49:12, right? He deserves, like, what we don't understand sometimes is all that he did. He is worthy of every life. He's worthy of every life, every person to be in obedience. So when one person goes astray, doesn't follow Jesus, or dies not knowing him, Jesus is not getting what he's worthy of
from that person's life.
From that life, and just like there's so much, and so it drove me to this, like, man, we really need to reach the lost, and what does that look like? And it became the forefront of my thinking. So when the Lord spoke to me about going back to work, and the Lord began to speak to me about building business, specifically his words were, feed your family and fund the kingdom. Fund these teams of people that are with you, fund the stuff that I'm doing. Suddenly my purpose, to be honest, before that, even when I was, in my career, I never really thought about being wealthy.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, sure. Who wouldn't like to have a nice house and nice cars and maybe a pool or something? I mean, maybe one day I'll do okay. I didn't have motivation for that. I didn't really have a thought for that. Once I had a kingdom mindset toward funding the kingdom, never in my life have I had such a desire to make millions upon millions upon millions of dollars.
Sure.
Because it's the kingdom.
Right.
Like, I'm looking at this and going, we can accomplish so much more when we have the resources. And so the business aspect of that for me has just become, how do I generate revenue and profit and take that profit and turn around and pour it back into the people, the processes, the nonprofits, et cetera, that are going to be able to continue getting this message and moving it forward, accomplishing what we need to do to give Jesus what he's worthy of.
Yeah.
And there was just such a shift in me that suddenly that's what it was always about.
Yeah. It's really neat that you say that, because I think for some people, if you're not careful, there's so many scripture verses that can be used to or overemphasized when not taken in context with the whole of what the Bible says about money. Jesus talks about the rich young ruler, that how hard it is for a wealthy man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
I was just reading in 1 Timothy this morning, 1 Timothy 6, and he's like, the root of all evil, the love of money is the root of all evil. I was like,
that's the key.
And exactly. It's like, it's not money, and it's the love of it, and just wanting to be wealthy for wealthy's sake.
And it's funny, it's like once you get a kingdom vision and a kingdom heart, from that point, money just is a tool.
Absolutely.
Money is a tool that you use for the sake of advancing the kingdom, and so you're no longer just wanting money for yourself, but it's for what you can do with it. And I'm excited. To me, it seems like you align yourself with kingdom purposes, then all of a sudden, it's like you've got the power of God behind you, driving you forward. You're just kind of, your life is like the tip of the spear, but you've got all this momentum and mass behind you.
Yeah, it has brought me to a place now where even with, the bread and our team, like I tend to live now. I live like, I don't know how to explain this to people because it's in my brain, but I tend to live like 3 and 5 years out. I'm thinking about, I see these glimpses of where we're headed. And I'm starting to catch this glimpse where I believe that the Lord wants he wants people to be kingdom minded and business minded. And God wants to literally, I believe, have businessmen and women who are focused on the kingdom, making millions of dollars and funding the kingdom and bringing these resources. And so like my at one point I used to think about how, we think about nonprofits that might go out and do missions work. And we think about foundations and grants from governments and different organizations. And these are the ways that we fund things. And yet the Lord is meant to, he wants to give us these things so that we can, we don't have to be dependent on that, right? And so I just have this desire now. I get really, really excited when I meet people who are making disciples. They're doing DMM, or whatever that process is that they're going through. As they're doing that, they're also doing business for the purpose of trying to fund the kingdom. And it starts with like making sure that they're they're feeding their families, but like, I want to go way beyond that.
Exactly. Sure. Yeah, no, I get that heart. I think that's exciting. But one of the things that's neat is that as I watch the way that you live, not only are you seeking to excel at business for the sake of the kingdom, but you're continuing to you have a bigger ministry than just making money.
Sure.
You continue to, be involved in people's lives, to lead worship, to be able to, come to prayer gatherings, to provide leadership and vision for, the community that we're part of. And so, why don't you share a little bit about, now it seems like you've kind of gone through, I go to church. That's my duty to God. I sing, I play on the worship team. I do the setup and the breakdown, and then I do my, that compartmentalism. Then, now I'm fully free. I'm a full-time missionary. Now you're every bit as much on mission.
Yeah.
Yet things are less compartmentalized and more integrated. I think there are still some people that are back at the place where it's like, I do my work, that's my work, and then
I go to church.
I go to church. What are some of the important, I guess, shifts of mind, shifts of life that you went through that maybe you could speak into, this is what we need to understand. Give us some guidance there if you're speaking to somebody who's still a bit compartmentalized.
Well, the first thing I would encourage you in is you want to, you're going to have these wars within yourself. Like I've challenged myself on when I started making money, is my heart really pure? Am I really in a good spot? I began to challenge myself about what, am I doing this right? But my people that know me real well know that my challenger personality does sometimes drive people crazy because I'm always trying to get the best out of everybody, right? Like, you can do so much more.
At least you start with yourself.
Yes, I love to challenge myself. I'm always looking at how I can be better on different things. So, but when it came to ministry, I guess in my own struggles with the Lord in my quiet time, I struggle with a lot of stuff. I'll use like worship ministry, for example. I'm very, very busy. I do enjoy leading worship. but there are aspects of it that it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And especially when people want you to lead worship their way.
Publicly,
Yeah,
right.
publicly and then their way.
Yeah.
They'll be like, we want you to do these songs,
Yeah.
this, and it's like,
Here's the atmosphere that we're trying to.
So I struggle a lot because this never fails. Every month this happens to me, or every other month. I know that the Lord has given me a gift for worship, and that the Lord wants to use that for the kingdom. Right. I've seen that. I've seen how it changes, even in some of my small DBS groups, where simply picking up a guitar and singing a song and how the Holy Spirit can just show up.
Yeah.
And the Lord showed me, I want to use that. And as soon as I agree to do a worship night or a setting, the enemy will immediately begin to attack at the level of, that's now new stress. And it's like the struggle every time. So it's not like, I just want to make this clear. It's not like, he found it. Somebody found it. And it's like, rainbows and unicorns or whatever. It's not, there's a struggle inside.
There's still tension. And
yeah. And so I think, though, to answer your question, I think the shift for me was, it's really hard to try and express this, but I think I used to go to work to make money, right? So that I can have that money to take care of myself and do other things. And now my goal is not to go to work to make money. My goal is to make money so I can do kingdom things. And it just shifted so much for me that that allowed me to go, I'm doing kingdom stuff, and the money that I make is for kingdom stuff. So, for example, as I got really busy this last year, I was missing out on really good opportunities for ministry. I wanted to be, as a business owner, I wanted to have time to sit in leaders' meetings. I wanted to have time to go to discipleship groups, to reach new people. And the growth of our business had gotten to a point where I wasn't able to do that much.
Sure.
So I was able, because I'm thinking this is about the kingdom, I was able to make the decision to hire an employee and pay a full-time salesperson to do a lot of what I was doing. Yeah, that's money going out of my pocket, but then it allows me to be more involved in those things. And then incidentally, as I did that, it started freeing my mind a little more from the stresses, so that I started having additional business ideas. And so now my salesman's doing their thing, and I'm over here starting other avenues of business and revenue because I freed that up. And so in the end, I guess, I don't know if I can tell you that there is a secret way to doing it, other than the Lord really helped my heart to change and realize everything I'm doing is about the kingdom. Like, I really want to free people from this idea that some people think if you're a business owner and you're doing missions, that what that really means is you kind of mentioned this earlier, you disciple your employees. Well, that's true, right? The goal is to disciple people,
Right.
but my real goal is to disciple as many people as I can. And so, yes, while I'm trying to disciple these individuals, that's not my primary focus. In fact, I'm doing that. It's part of the kingdom. It's part of what I want to do. But I would rather get the opportunity to meet my customer, because I'm meeting 2 or 3 customers a day in our business, and see if those opportunities open doors for praying, and that leads into discipleship, that type of stuff, or other connections. But in the end, I want to be able to put my time, my resources into the places where we have the greatest impact. And so it's not just, I think some people think, well, starting a Christian business is nothing more than being a business owner who does discipleship inside of his company. I think it's way bigger than that. I think that
it can go way further.
Yeah.
Especially, and I think one of the things that's kind of an assumption that I want to call out is that you are part of a community that has a common vision for disciple making. And so part of what brings some balance there is that you can find your lane and focus on it and take the I can do less of this here, but I'm doing more of this. And overall, we are advancing forward because of this. It's not all about you.
That's right.
And that's really neat. So, I observe that, and I think that takes some of the pressure off because we do have time limitations. We have energy limitations.
Sure.
And, God's heart is as big as the world. And we're only going to be one place at one time. So I think even Jesus himself, recognized the importance of focusing impact, being part of a community that is going to carry the gospel far beyond him, but his impact in his circle is what continues to reverberate down through the ages.
Yeah, one of the things, a lot of young people that we were around and discipling when I was doing full-time missions, and one of the other motivators in my prayer about what God was doing was they would see what we were doing, and there was a lot of young people that were like, well, that's really cool. Like people give you money.
Yeah.
And you get to sit around and have coffee with people.
Yeah.
And people give you money to do that.
Yeah. I think I want to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So
I love having coffee with people.
Yeah. Right. And get paid to do it. Wow. I don't need much to live on. Kind of in that process, when I was in my 15 years in the corporate world, I realize now that those were training grounds, that God was teaching me how to build teams, how to work with teams. And one of the things that the Lord really put in me then, and then in the kingdom, he just really blossomed it, is we are a community, we are a body, and we have different gifts and we have different strengths. And I feel like even in the church that everybody wants to be the charismatic guy. Everybody wants to be the person in charge. And so we're always trying to be that, and we don't realize that it's way better if we just find our purpose and don't really care who gets the credit, or if we don't try to do everything. So it's been so liberating in the community that we have people that are very comfortable with their strengths. And they're comfortable with their weaknesses, and they're okay saying hey, I'm not great at this, but you are, so can you help me with this?
Right.
And you just work that way. And one of the greatest parts now is when I first started doing business for about a year and a half, I really, really struggled emotionally, even though I knew the Lord took me on this path. I struggled emotionally, feeling like a failed missionary. Right? Because I took my kids and we went and we did missions for 3 years, and I didn't see anything really happen. And now you're out starting a business. And so from the world's perspective, it didn't work. It didn't work. Yeah. Yeah. Nice try. I struggled with that, but coming to a place now, and this is where I think our community is at, of knowing this is my part to play.
Right.
Yeah.
This is my role, and I'm okay with that. It's not being this guy. So now I can look at someone else in our group that might be really, really evangelistic and great at making new connections and great at doing discipleship. And I can go, dude,
go.
That is awesome. And I so want to be you, but you know what? Since I can't be you, let me just give you plenty of resources so you can be you.
Right.
And then it's like, I want to fund you. What do you need? And now it's a partnership, because Matthew 10:41 says that he who receives a prophet in the name of a prophet receives the prophet's reward. And when you look at God's ideas of community, and you look at God's idea of who we are as a body, that verse is not saying like you're going to get your percentage of the reward. You get the prophet's reward. Right? And I had this business paradigm shift where I realized it's sort of like the military. There's guys on the ground with guns. There are guys on the ground driving the trucks. There are guys on the ground that are filling the trucks with fuel and maintaining them. There are guys that are driving the fuel to the front lines. There's support, there's logistics, there's intelligence, there's all these aspects. And if any of those pieces are missing, it's a failure. So we write documentaries and we follow and we really look up to the guys that put their life on the line, but they don't do it alone. And so we win the war. So we as a body, as a community, are reaching the lost, and we get to receive that reward. So I kind of think of the kingdom now as like financial investing. If you are somebody making disciples and I want rewards in heaven, I need to let me give to that.
Yeah. No,
I'm going
that's
to invest in that.
Yes.
a great perspective. I really appreciate that.
And I think that's good too for our listeners that, maybe they're in a job, God's not called them to start another business, but to a way to think of their finances and of their giving, that's a whole other arena.
Yeah. Justin, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and your perspective. You got a great story. Looks like you're looking up a Bible verse, so I'm going to let you close us with that. And
it's close worthy, I think.
Yeah.
And so as you're thinking about this, and as we're going through this, I think people will start going, man, this is a great idea. I want to start business or do money to fund the kingdom. It's about this shift that we have, right? Like the Lord. Well, let me just read this verse and leave it with you guys for a minute. So we all have heard it, Psalms 127. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman keeps awake in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early and retire late to eat the bread of your painful labors, for he gives to his beloved even in his sleep. And the Lord has just brought this back and encouraged me with it recently here to say, we don't need to struggle. We don't need to toil. We don't need to try to figure it out. Sometimes we're not, like, the Lord knows us as his children, and he's a good father. He knows maybe we're not ready to start the business because we haven't quite had the heart shift or the paradigm shift that we need. Because I've met a lot of great people that will say, God's called me to fund the kingdom, and they're still buying cars and houses and whenever we get out of debt, we're gonna
Well, you didn't start giving and being generous after you started making money.
You were already giving.
That's right. So as you're doing all this and people are thinking about it, just remember, like, this is not like we get ideas and we do stuff. When I started this, God was my partner. God really blessed it. God really had his hand upon it. And if I were being honest, I didn't really want to do it. I just knew that the Lord was calling us to it, and wanting us to do that. And so let the Lord speak to our hearts about business or what we're doing, and have that shift where it's about his kingdom, and that's what we're going after.
That's 100%.
And if he's building it with us, it's going to take off. It's going to happen. It's going to work.
100%. And, and your story, you have passages and phases that you went through. I love your transparency and just saying, I kind of got to the end of my missionary stint and felt, as God's leading me into something new, that meant I was a failed missionary. But the truth is that it's not about success or failure. It's about obedience.
That's right.
And the neat thing about it is that when he called you to step out, you stepped out, and you stayed there for the time that he had you there. And then when he had you move to the next phase, you obeyed. So the best thing for our listeners is not to try to say, oh, well, that's what I'm called to do, and then to go out and make it happen. Listen to the Lord, follow him, draw near to him, and have a broader perspective so that you can appreciate all that God's doing in his body. And there might be some people that come to mind as you listen to this, like this. I got a friend who really needs to hear this because they would really be encouraged by Justin's story. Forward this on to them. If there's something that encouraged you, get on the Sons and Daughters Facebook podcast group and just let us know. We will be sending out another podcast next week at noon. Every week we get another one. Justin, thank you so much for being a guest. We look forward to hearing more from you, hopefully sometime in the future, because we know the Lord's not done with you. There's more phases and shifts and things yet to come. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
And it's good to be a brother in arms together here in the same work locally. So I really appreciate you, brother.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
brothers and sisters, we will see you next week. And in the meantime, we encourage you to walk in the fullness of Jesus Christ and impact the world around you.
Amen.